What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Today, simple, easy topic for you. It's a topic that we often go over in the offseason, breakout candidates, but I wanted to do things a little bit different today. So I'm going to be looking at 5 Packers that I think could take a significant jump in 2023, a very common topic. But the reason that I picked these 5 players is because in some way, shape, or form, we actually saw it happen in 2022. One of them's a bit of a reach. We'll get into that more in just a moment. But the other 4, we legitimately saw a jump or saw the ability to be a major player in 2022. And they basically just need to sort of carry that momentum over into 2023. It's not as much of a projection. It's not as something that we're like, let me give you an example. Kingsley Enagbare, Romeo Doubs, Quay Walker. Those are 3 people who are not on today's list. I think those 3 players we're all hoping can take a significant jump. Josh Myers is a player we hope we can take, who can take a significant jump. I think even John Runyan Jr. has the ability to take a jump even further. And there's others on the team that we could go over as well. Those are players that I think we could all put on a list of potential breakout candidates in 2023, but we didn't necessarily see it for any prolonged stretch. Quay Walker graded in the negative, both per myself and Pro Football Focus, for the vast majority of the year. Were the flashes there? Yes. Do I think he can become a really good NFL player? Yes. But did we see it for any prolonged period of time in 2022? We did not. So he's not on today's list. Romeo Doubs, kind of the same thing. Had some incredible flashes, looked like he could be a legitimate playmaker, had some injury issues, had some drop issues, just signs of really good stuff. But again, his 2023 breakout would be more of a projection based on some of the things that we saw here and there, not over a prolonged period of time. Kingsley Enagbare, exact same situation. Some really impressive stuff. I love his pass move set as a pass rusher. I think he's going to continue to grow. I think he's going to put on functional strength, but we didn't see very many complete games from JJ Enagbare. Some really awesome plays, absolutely. Complete games were harder to come by. We didn't see that once again for like over a longer period of time, right? So those 3 not on today's list, all of which we could hope take major leaps and jumps in 2023 and become major breakout candidates at that time. The 5 players today that I'm going to be discussing, more specifically 4, with 1, we have to do a little bit more heavy lifting here, is a little bit more of a projection, but the 5 players today at least showed signs that they could do it at a very high level in 2022. So let's actually just get the reach out of the way first. And I get that this is a reach, but I think it's worth discussing nonetheless for obvious reasons. And that's Jordan Love. You saw his image on the photo. You probably could have put 2 and 2 together of which player I was talking about here. Jordan Love played a total of 26 snaps last year in the regular season. To say that we can take those 26 snaps and make any sort of real firm commitment of like, yep, he's ready, he's good to go, would be ridiculous. But at the same token, you can only play the snaps that you're given, and you can only do what you have in front of you. Like, you can only play those plays, play those snaps, regardless of what situations they come in. I think if we put Jordan Love's 2022 body of work together as a whole, meaning what I saw in OTAs, in mini camps, in training camps, what we saw together in preseason, and then what we saw in those very limited, very minimal, mostly meaningless 26 snaps in the regular season, we saw progress. Does that mean he's ready to be a legit starting quarterback in this league? It doesn't. We don't know that. Everything with Jordan Love is a progression at this point. Whether you are Brian Gutekunst, whether you are Matt LaFleur, whether you are anyone, you're making a assumption based on some stuff that you've seen in practice. Now, obviously, the Packers have more reps to watch than we have, but until you get a prolonged season with Jordan Love at quarterback in the game, playing as a starter, it's really tough to glean anything from what he is going to be able to do long term. You just have to see it on Sundays in order to make that actual assessment, I guess. So what I did see, though, in even 26 snaps was a very positive grade. I had a plus 0.55 grade in just 26 snaps this past season. Pro Football Focus had a 78.7 grade on him, which is a very sound and solid grade for a quarterback. And it just showed signs of real legitimate potential. And again, I'm not just taking those 26 snaps. I'm taking the training camp. I'm taking the scrimmages. I'm taking regular season. Preseason, all of it together. And I think we saw a very legitimate jump. So I do believe that Jordan Love is ready to take a step as a potential breakout candidate in 2023. Whether he gets that opportunity remains to be seen. Once defense's game plan for him will be a totally different story. And once he has a full offense that is also game planned for him, that Matt LaFleur is giving him the reins and also making play call choices and game plan decisions based on him being the starter, that could certainly help him as well. There's going to be a balancing act there. I don't think anyone's expecting Love to just all of a sudden start and be a top 12, top 15 quarterback in the league. It's not to say he couldn't be, but I think that would be a pretty big projection. But I do think he has shown signs, legitimate signs, if you look at them. Justice Mosqueda posted a Twitter video, or a video on Twitter, of every single snap he took in 2022. And just go out and watch it. And I think it was every throw he made actually in 2022. Just go out and watch it. And you see some real big time throws from Jordan Love on that reel. If you add the preseason stuff in there, it's even better. So that's one on my list. It's definitely more of a reach, but even in the given snaps, like if you take that 0.55 grade on 26 snaps, you would have been the highest graded player per play on the Packers last year. Again, meaningless, absolutely, but it just goes to show you that when he was in the game, he was ripping the ball, he was playing more confident, he was making better decisions, and we did see some real throws from Jordan Love. So that's one. Definitely more of a reach, but the other four, I think we're going to see a consistent trend, and we saw some real positive play from these four players that we can be very hopeful are going to be legitimate players in 2023. Let's start out with TJ Slayton. Slayton is still 25 years old. He had a plus 1.75 grade over his last 8 games. If you would extrapolate just how he played in the last 8 games over a 17-game season, and he could continue on that pace, that would be a plus 3.7 grade over 17 games for TJ Slayton. As a reminder, Kenny Clark was a plus 4.25. So you are looking at, over those 8 games, put it through the course of the season, a player that would have come close to grading out what Kenny Clark did in this past season. That was Kenny's worst season as a Packer. It was a 5-game stretch from Kenny last year that was the worst of his career. So I'm not saying, and please do not read into this, yes, TJ Slayton's the next Kenny Clark. He's not, and it's not that at all. But it just it gives you an idea of like, how would you like to have, even 2022, Kenny Clark is a heck of a football player, right? That is a very positive player for your team. Can you imagine adding another one of those? Just that, like, let's say Kenny Clark plays like 2020 Kenny Clark or 2019 Kenny Clark, and he's just dominant. And now you add a 2022 Kenny Clark to that player. Like, now you're really cooking, right? And TJ Slayton showed the ability to be a disruptor. He showed the ability to get into the backfield. He showed a rare ability to reset the line of scrimmage, something that the Dean Lowrys, the Tyler Lancasters, those players really struggled to do over the course of their career in Green Bay. He has the ability to be a difference maker. And we saw real, true positive play from Slayton over the last 8 games of the season. And if that's something that he can continue to do, and he can do it consistently, and that's not even saying like if he takes a little bit of a step forward, now what if instead of a 3.7, that's a plus 5 grade over the course of the season? That would be a massive, big-time impact player for this Packers defense. Somebody that would make it extremely harder to run against when he's playing at that level of football on the inside of the defense, and somebody that can also generate some pressure and like I said, reset the line of scrimmage, collapse the pocket a little bit from the inside. That would be a huge win for the Packers defense if Slayton could play at that level. And over the last 8 games, and we're not talking like somebody who played, I don't know, like at like a Pro Bowl level over the last 8 games or anything like that, but that is real, sound, positive football. And again, if he can do that for 17, would be a massive, massive improvement and something that Green Bay could really improve upon just from within with that type of play in 2023. Next player up is the exact same position. Devonte Wyatt turns 25 in March, had a plus 0.9 grade for the season, but had a plus 0.8 grade on the very last game of the season. And remember, that's obviously a key game. He was the best defender on the field that day for Green Bay, made the biggest impact, and that was in a key game. And that's when he actually started to get significant snaps because Dean Lowry had been out. Last couple games, they gave him a much increased snap load, and he really made the most of them and showed that he could be a positive performer when given that opportunity. You give him more playing time, you give him the opportunity to be a starter through the course of the season. I mentioned it last year. The only thing this guy is missing is just a little bit of work on his technique. The skills are ridiculous. He's an incredible athlete. He has a really sweet spin move. He gets up the field. He can collapse the pocket. He showed in the last game specifically that he can hold up at the point of attack, improved leaps and bounds over the course of the year at hanging, like holding on against double teams. Like he would get just washed out of the screen early in the year. It wasn't beautiful. Let's just put it that way. Towards the end of the year still, but it was light years better than it was early in the year. And then the hustle is there as well. The willingness, the desire. He is a motor player that is constantly hustling after plays. You have a freak athlete that there's just not many humans made like him on the earth, with incredible desire and will and a want to. Man, you just get a little bit better at his technique, which you're hoping he makes that jump in year 2 and is now in a second year under Jerry Montgomery, who does really fantastic work with the defensive linemen. Man, if all of a sudden that starts coming to fruition and we start seeing a game like we did against Detroit in the last week of the season, against a good Detroit Lions defensive line or offensive line too, that is not a insignificant offensive line for the Lions. So if he can continue to do that, and I'm not saying a plus 0.8 grade over 17 games, yeah, that would be absolutely amazing. We'd be talking about a potential Pro Bowl player on our hands if that were the case. But even just what he showed, he plus 0.9 on the season for a rookie who didn't get much playing time. Again, I think if he can continue his progression, he can be a big-time player. And now you're talking about, we just talked about TJ Slayton. You know what you get out of Kenny Clark, Devonte Wyatt at that other spot. You have the building blocks for a really good defensive line that can be a foundation piece for this defense moving forward. Slayton and Wyatt need to be a huge part of that. This can't just be like, Wyatt played okay today here and there. This can't just be like Slayton, he played 30 snaps, 10 were good, 10 were bad, 10 were okay. We need consistency out of these players. I think they can get it. I think we saw true signs of it, and that's why I'm hopeful that those two players can be true breakout candidates in 2023. The next two, probably a bit more obvious, but certainly worth noting anyway. The first is Zach Tom, who turns 24 in March. He had a plus 1.4 grade over the last 5 games of the season. He showed tremendous improvement from week 1 against Minnesota when he got put in at the end of that game. And everyone was like clamoring for Zach Tom at that point, which by the way, they were right, but he got a bit overwhelmed in his first performance against the Vikings. After that, things settled down for him, and by the end of the year, he was playing extremely positive football. You take a plus 1.4 grade over 5 games, and you extrapolate that, if he could do that consistently over 17 games, it would have been a plus 4.75 for the season. That would have been, if somebody graded plus 4.75 this past season, would have been the top graded offensive line for the year. Now, David Bakhtiari, healthy through the course of the year, would have blown that out of the water, but I digress. That still would have been a massively positive player for the Packers on offense and specifically on their offensive line. Zach Tom, very similar to Enigbare in a way and some of these other rookies, just needs functional strength. His footwork is really, really sound. His technique, while not perfect and still things to work on, was leaps ahead of where most rookies are from a technique standpoint. You love his will, and he's got a little bit. I wouldn't say he's like the I don't know, Frank Winters or like some just dirty, nasty offensive lineman, but he has a grit to him that you can just tell on every given play. It doesn't matter if he's against the top defensive lineman, worst defense, he just does not want to get beat, and he has a little bit of that attitude to him as well. He's just missing some of that functional strength, and if he can put on 5-10 pounds of muscle this offseason without losing any of his athleticism, has the ability to be a really special player. I do think his long-term position is tackle. Even more specifically, I think his long-term position is left tackle. He should be, if Bakhtiari is back, he should be the starter at right tackle next year. That's just how I feel about it, quite honestly. If Bakhtiari is not back, he should be the starter at left tackle. I don't think there's any question about that. So really love Zach Tom. And again, this is not just projecting some flash plays. This was 5 games of really positive football from Zach Tom. And if you can do that through the course of the season, he is going to be a massive, massive player for this Packers offensive line moving forward. And then last but not least, Christian Watson, who turns 24 in May, a plus 5.7 grade over the last 8 games of the season. Let's just put this out there. My highest graded player on either side of the ball for the entire season through 17 games last year was Aaron Jones with a plus 5.25 grade. The only thing that kept Christian Watson back from being the highest graded player last year was the first game against Minnesota, where he had a really negative grade in large part due to the massive drop at the beginning of that game, and then just missing some games due to injury. If he doesn't drop that ball and he doesn't miss any games, he would have run away with the MVP award last year and the highest graded player award for Green Bay. Plus 5.7 over 8 games would be a plus 12 over the entire course of the season if he was able to continue with those numbers. over those last 8 games, didn't have a negative grade in any of the games. And even the games where he was not having 3 touchdown performances or like an 80-yard touchdown run on a reverse, he was drawing the attention of opposing defenders, defensive coordinators. He was the focal point. He changed this offense. When this offense got going, it was because of Christian Watson. He is a game breaker candidate. He is a playmaker candidate. He is a true bona fide star in the making at wide receiver. He has work to do. He needs to continue to hone his craft, and he needs to continue to get better as a route runner. His hands need to continue to improve. There are things that he can do to still get better, which, by the way, is a scary thought. Because if all of a sudden his route running gets better, his separation, his releases at the line of scrimmage, and his hands get better, it's game over. Because he is too fast, he is too tall, he is too competitive, and he is too athletic for corners in this league. He is a freak. There is no two ways about it. And not only as a rookie, when he's a complete unfinished product, when his hands aren't quite there yet, when his route running's not quite there yet, when his release game at the line of scrimmage isn't quite there yet, when those things aren't there, he is still the guy that made this offense go and the team that players feared. And if he just gets a little bit more nuance to his game, if he puts in the time and the effort and becomes a really true skilled wide receiver, he can be as good as he wants to be. And the scary part is, even if he doesn't, he is going to be a problem for defenses moving forward just based on his skills as is today. Like I said, a massive 5.7 grade over his last 8 games. Every game graded, or not a single game graded in the negative. He had one that was a neutral grade, but no games graded in the negative, and would have projected out, if he continued at that pace, at a plus 12 grade through the course of an entire season. That would have, remember, Aaron Jones plus 5.25 was my highest graded player last year on either side of the ball. He would have more than doubled that had he continued that on for a 17-game season. So those are my 5 players that I think can take legitimate jumps based on what we saw in 2022. A little bit more of a projection for Jordan Love, no question about it. But Zach Tom, Christian Watson, Devonte Wyatt, TJ Slayton all showed through some significant stretches of playing time that they can be positive players as still young developing players in this league. And the opportunity to make another jump in 2023 could make all of those players special and could make a huge difference when Green Bay either is trying to compete again for a Super Bowl, if Aaron's back and they maybe go the all-in route, or if they're starting to rebuild, with Jordan Love as quarterback, they're going to need everyone to be a little bit better if they don't want to be a 4, 5, 6 win team, right? TJ Slayton, Devonte Wyatt, Christian Watson, Zach Tom, Jordan Love, those 5 players could go a long way in making this team either really good with the right scenario next year, or go the right way in rebuilding this team a lot faster, because those 5 guys are taking a major step in 2023. That's going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me. Always appreciate it. We'll be right back here tomorrow. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.